The Biden administration has pretended that the law requires them to let anyone in who claims asylum and let them stay here, even though they're here illegally. This is why Judicial Watch's voice is so important, because the work we do is essential to the functioning of a healthy Republican form of government. How is it we can have a consent of the government, the consent of the governed, if the governed don't know what the government's up to? And in this day and age of big government, there's a lot that we don't know what the government's up to on. And Judicial Watch's essential leading role is figuring out how the government's using your tax dollars. Usually it's for no good ends. And we sue in court under the Freedom of Information Act to find out information about what the government's doing. And we focus on corruption issues, obviously, because to the degree the government's doing anything, it should be done honestly. It shouldn't be the powers of government shouldn't be used to abuse the rule of law. And so Judicial Watch is taking a leadership role, both from the left and the right. I don't think anyone sues more than Judicial Watch under the Freedom of Information Act. So we've got, I think we filed about a half a dozen lawsuits in the last 2 weeks under the Freedom of Information Act. I'm going to talk about a few of them. The first one relates to, and what I love about Judicial Watch is that the FOIA is a way to uncover information about issues that are, sometimes they're not all that exciting, or it doesn't have a strong public, a lot of the people don't know about it, but they should know about it. But sometimes there are a lot of issues out there that, despite you would think, oh, don't we have all the information on this big issue? No, we don't, because no one cares. The media doesn't care. Congress doesn't care. So it's Judicial Watch to the rescue in terms of figuring out what's been going on. And one of these issues is the border crisis. We have nearly 5 million people over the last 2 years enter the United States of America illegally under the Biden border crisis, an invasion aided and abetted by the President of the United States and his top officials in the various agencies responsible for border security and national security. So there's a crisis beyond belief. Just think of that number. And in addition to that number, I don't know if the number is in addition to, but as part of this number at least, you have children being trafficked into the United States. So this human trafficking operation not only involves adults, but involves children. So this is the way it works. Virtually no one crosses the border without the permission of the cartels. It's a trafficking operation. And what happens is they cross the border, not nearly enough are turned away. Millions fraudulently claim asylum. And the Biden administration has pretended that the law requires them to let anyone in who claims asylum and let them stay here, even though they're here illegally. So when you hear everyone says, well, they're asylum seekers, that doesn't mean they can stay here. They're here illegally. Crossing the border illegally and claiming asylum doesn't give you a deportation, I guess a get-out-of-jail-free card in terms of deportation. And of course, more recently, in recent years, they've used children as a vehicle to break the border, and also to bring in, quote, family units, even though a lot of them aren't even families. So the children are being misused in ways that are outrageous. And what Judicial Watch is doing is that we've sued, most recently, the Health and Human Services Department, which is supposed to handle unaccompanied alien children and provide them, obviously protection and other benefits once they're here in the United States. And what's going on is they're trafficking these children effectively. That's the way I read it. Is they're helping the children and the parents that are with the children, or the adults who are with the children. They come in, and even if they're alone, they come in, they try to figure out who's the responsible party for them, and they'll send them along to them. Doesn't matter if the responsible party is an illegal alien or was involved in actually trafficking the child. I mean, that's the status of the rule of law crisis when it comes to handling unaccompanied alien children. Now, a lot of this has been going on in a place you probably didn't think about. It's in Tennessee. There was a letter in May of 2021 to the HHS Secretary, Xavier Becerra, and the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, from Tennessee Senators Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty, and Congressman Chuck Fleischman also wrote the letter. We write to seek information on the Department of Health and Human Services management of unaccompanied alien children in federal custody and the facilities used to house them. We are particularly concerned about recent reports regarding the use of Chattanooga, Tennessee as a central location for resettling UACs in the United States, UACs being an acronym for unaccompanied alien children. There are media reports that within the last week, at least 4 planes carrying UACs landed at Wilson Air Center in Chattanooga before swiftly boarding the children onto buses and transporting them to multiple cities across the southeastern United States for apparent resettlement with zero transparency regarding what was happening. For months, reports have detailed how thousands of children are being housed in neglectful conditions at mass shelters operated by HHS under a veil of secrecy. We are deeply troubled by the lack of transparency and accountability regarding the conditions that HHS is subjecting these children to. Several governors, including Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee, have written Biden expressing alarm over how the federal government has circumvented state authorities by placing unaccompanied alien children in their state's facilities with little transparency, consent, or coordination. So you hear the left going crazy because you have the governors of Texas and Florida sending illegal aliens to New York and Washington, D.C. and Chicago, and the liberal mayors of those cities pretending that's an outrage. And it's the only reason it's an outrage is because it's a visible transportation of illegal aliens into those cities. Because when you're talking about 5 million people coming into the United States over the last 2 years or so, obviously those cities are swamped as it is. But they are able to pretend it's not an issue because there's no visible, visible invasion really of the city. But when the buses arrive in a public way, it drives the left crazy because they get hoisted on their own petard when it comes to their sanctuary city policies, which of course encourage the invasion that's underway, that they're complaining about. And part of that, and the other hypocrisy, of course, the Biden administration has been harassing DeSantis and Governor Abbott in Texas over this, is that the Biden administration is doing the exact same thing in the cover of night, or in a secretive way, as we're highlighting here, with children. So these children are not supposed to be not supposed to be here in the United States. And to the degree they are there with their parents, or that we can attach them to parents, they should all be removed. I mean, how can you resettle them with a foreign national who's unlawfully present? How is that not participating in child smuggling? So what we did was we asked last year, and we haven't gotten an answer yet. So we've waited over a year to sue for all documents related to the preparation of logistics involved in the transportation of UACs to and from Tennessee, that Chattanooga Wilson that Wilson Air Center, and all official internal email communications related to that transportation network. So what's happening is, as alleged here, is that these unaccompanied children are being trafficked into the United States, and then the baton is handed to the Biden administration, who bring the children over to Tennessee, and through Tennessee, these children are then smuggled further to the endpoints, and who knows where they're being smuggled to after the fact. So this is like a human rights crisis, and the Biden administration is enabling the largest human trafficking operation in world history. Forget about in American history. There's nothing comparable in the world where you've had human trafficking of the numbers that are involved with the cartels moving human bodies across the southern border with Mexico. And just with the kids alone, and I'm sure this is just a fraction of the numbers, CBS reported that 130,000 minors have been entered into the system in the fiscal year so far. I think it's practically speaking almost over. And that's even more than last year. So it's, say, 250,000 minors over the last 2 years who have been trafficked into the United States, 250,000. And there's no sign that it's going to slow down. And of course, when you have an open border, and in my view it is an open border, despite government lies to the contrary, how can you expect this not to happen? Judicial Watch already uncovered the deplorable conditions. And when you have numbers like this, you could be Mother Teresa, and you're going to have trouble providing shelter to these large numbers. And of course, we uncovered documents that a large number of adults were posing as minors. So I'm being charitable in describing all of these kids as minors. For all we know, they're adults. There's no reasonable way we can have of figuring out if they're children or adults because of the lack of documentation. The left celebrates undocumented aliens. Well, that means we don't know how old they are. And some come in knowing they'll be treated specially, alleging they're minors when in fact they're adults, and usually young male adults. So this is it's a humanitarian crisis. It's a public safety crisis because these children are in conditions where they are more likely to be harmed, and obviously the staff caring for them are more likely to be harmed. And it's a rule of law crisis because none of them are supposed to be here. And if we had a border that was protected and secure, we wouldn't have this issue. And I don't, illegal aliens, they have no right to be here. I don't blame them or are angry at them for crossing the border illegally. I mean, if you support the rights of illegal aliens and protecting them, you want a secure border. Because it's a deadly business. It's a dangerous business. And where you have child trafficking and human trafficking, you have sex trafficking as well. It's monstrous what's going on with the support of the Biden administration, because they've opened the spigot at the border and they refuse to close it, and they know they can close it, but because they're extremists, and in my view, I don't see how anyone who loves America would want this to continue. I don't know how anyone who wants America to continue as a nation would want this to continue. The conclusion I draw is that these policies are designed to destroy the country. And I hope the new Congress, and I don't know if it's going to be controlled by Republicans or Democrats, certainly it's likely the House will be controlled by Republicans. I mean, if they don't get on the ball in terms of doing something about this, on the funding issue, on the rule of law issue, and frankly on the impeachment issue, then what are they going to be there for? Our country's under attack. This is an invasion. And these cartels are as much our enemies as anything you read about from North Korea or China or Russia. And it's on our border, and the threat is a clear and present danger. So I know it's just one lawsuit about the way kids are being treated in this illegal immigration crisis, but you pull that string and it unravels the larger crisis we're in as a nation, thanks to the purposeful and reckless policies of this administration. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.